Good evening, everybody. I'm Charles Rowley, Post-Acute Director for Care Patrol Sarasota and Lakewood Ranch. I'm joined this evening with Bob Damrau, licensed mental health professional. And Bob, thank you for taking time to join us this evening, and of course for your service to countless individuals and families in Sarasota and Manatee counties who have come to you both in difficult times and moments of crisis. And I think everyone would agree we find ourselves in a time of crisis for not just individuals and communities, families, but entire cities and states, and it is worldwide. It is truly a pandemic. I want to start off this evening by asking you, when did coronavirus or COVID-19 go from being surreal to real for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Charles. Good question. I am obviously speaking to you from my home. I am trying to stay faithful in this unprecedented emergency of life. Also, the need to adjust my everyday routines of life raises feelings of inadequacy in the here and now as we're navigating new waters. And then the loss of experiencing, more often than not vicariously, the exaltations of life. Watching the home team hit a home run in order to win the game produce thoughts of uncertainty going forward. And while COVID-19 has our attention, I want to share with the listeners that it is not our long-term reality. So there are moments where life will still seem surreal. But I think that that's okay because we're in that uncharted territory. We haven't never done this before. And so what's really helped me, I think, personally, is my connection with God and knowing his good heart towards me. And that renews hope and it keeps me faithful. And so I talk with him and I meditate on what is true. And I even sing during the day to him as well. Those are all things that have been helpful for me.
That's excellent. And you are a family man, and I was going to ask you about what you think about that personally, but also now professionally as a counselor, what are your thoughts about how this is affecting people's lives?
I think, first of all, as a therapist, I need to protect my own emotional health. I am also very interested in the resilience of those in my sphere of influence. Those things are at the forethought of my thoughts and my actions right now. And so I practice healthy self-care. Mindfulness is what the term that is used in my field today. Mm-hmm. When I'm intentional about protecting my emotional well-being, only then am I ready to help those around me in what would be a meaningful way. And so things I do to do that is I read things that are fun to read. Mm-hmm. I practice positive affirmations that are based on truth. I actually put those on my phone and they come up every day to remind me of the good things. I process the longings of my heart with those of my inner circle, those that are closest to me. I identify feelings and I generate needs that can then be met in healthy ways. And I pursue healthy fun. So those are all pieces that are important in order for me to do what I need to do then as a counselor. And a blog that our mutual friend, Dr. Jeffrey Humbarger, shared via Facebook notes that 70% of a person's happiness comes from his or her relationships with other people. 70%. And my concern then, as a mental health counselor, is due to the physical distancing, some people have no one around them. And this cuts right against the core or the fabric of being human.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for sharing that with Dr. Jeff Humbarger. He, of course, is one of the many who are on the front lines here locally at Sarasota Memorial. from the start of this pandemic, there have been people proactively, like yourself, self-quarantining, isolating, to now where we are required to shelter in place, to stay at home, unless our work is considered essential. And while this is absolutely the correct and responsible thing to do, the course of action, what concerns does this give you as a mental health counselor about the emotional health of people who are in prolonged periods of quarantining and isolation?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the greatest concern is through the social distancing. We don't need to social distance. We can simply physical distance and still stay connected. And so we have to figure out ways in which to do that. In one of the pieces that you've written, you have some really good ideas. The electronic media is probably the best way to do that right now. That's FaceTiming, and it's email, and it's texting, and other things that I don't use, but that are available. So it's really important for a person's mental health to stay connected, stay connected with others.
I like what you bring up about the term social distancing. That's not what we need to do, because social interaction is important, but the physical distancing obviously is necessary. Bob, I've known you for over 7 years, and I've learned so many things from you. But there is one thing that you consistently have talked about, either in your seminars or in your group settings, and that is one anothering, the concept of one anothering. What is one anothering, and why is this so important?
One anothering is a biblical concept. That phrase is used 58 times in the New Testament. It talks about loving one another and forgiving one another and giving preference to one another and honoring one another, praying for one another. 58 times that phrase is used, that one anothering phrase. And it is at the core of healthy community and healthy family, the one anothering piece. And so when we talk about staying connected, we're talking about one anothering, which can be done in some very practical ways as well.
Yeah. What are some of those ways that we can practice one anothering while also practicing the physical distancing?
Yeah. So my son-in-law is doing something right now where he is, for people that are quarantined, he gets their shopping list and he does the shopping for them, and then leaves the groceries, paper products, whatever it is, on their front porch or the stoop, whatever they have. And that's a great way of doing it. Neighborhoods, getting out without touching, just in the neighborhood. I've seen YouTubes and Facebook videos of neighborhoods getting out, singing together and playing together, although they're not physically touching. Making sure neighbors you haven't seen in a while are okay. Phone call, knock on the front door, whatever, that kind of thing. So maybe the best thing is, what is it that you would want others to be doing or thinking about you, and then put that into shoe leather yourself.
Absolutely. Our owner, Wendy of Care Patrol, she had a wonderful video that she put on her Facebook and also on YouTube, just encouraging people to do exactly what you're talking about. And then she wanted to offer a service from Care Patrol for us to go out and do exactly like you said, grocery shopping, something as simple as that for people who cannot get out of their home or are in assisted living communities that cannot leave. And I want to share with you, I got 2 phone calls today that took us up on this offer, and they were both ladies living in Sarasota. And the first one called, and I asked her if she could possibly email me her grocery list. And I explained the protocols of how we would do this. She didn't have a computer, and she was unable to do that. And she doesn't have a smartphone where she could even text it to me. So she asked me to get a pen and paper and write down her entire grocery list for her. And it reminded me of when I was a little boy and helping my mom at home in Kansas. And she would say, Charlie boy, get something to write with, and we're going to write down our grocery list together. But I hadn't done that in years. And I had to tell you about my hand literally hurt so bad from just writing all these things. And the second woman.
Well, you know what's cool about that too is it brought you back to a good memory of your growing up. And I wonder if there were memories for her that also brought up for her that were good.
She was extremely grateful, mm-hmm. and did get a little emotional on the phone. I think just because of the service that we're offering,
Sure.
for nothing in return, just because that's the right thing to do.
It's simple, but it's meaningful.
Very meaningful. The second lady who called does have a computer, but is not sure how to use it. She does have a smartphone, and she did say that she could text me her grocery list, but rather than texting me the entire grocery list in one text, she sent me over 40 separate texts. Each text was one item from the grocery store I had to pick up. So that was an interesting way to do some shopping. So yeah. I will be shopping for those ladies on Friday and dropping those items off on their doorstep, and I'm excited to do that.
Cool.
Bob, I appreciate you so much for our friendship and our relationship and everything I've learned from you over the years. And I would just like to ask you, finally, what words would you like to share with us and for us?
So Isaiah 40:31 is a scripture in the Old Testament that says, they who rise up with wings as eagles shall renew their strength. They shall run. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Hmm. And the three things that I responded with your first question about the reality versus the surreal feelings here were talked about by Isaiah. He talked about the emergencies of life when you have to run and it just takes all the energy and to get through something. It doesn't last long, but it takes a lot to go through it. And the promise is that we'll have the strength to do that. The other two, the routines of life, which are changing for us right now, staying faithful says that we won't get weary of those things. And then, of course, those exaltations, those great times of life that we so enjoy, that keep us so motivated, those will also continue. Although we might be looking for those in some different places today, like telephone calls with those ladies that you just described.
Yes. Yeah, those are beautiful opportunities for me to experience. And I'll share one final thing with you that we've done here in my home. I'm working from home. My wife is a school teacher, as you know, and she's working from home. And my daughters one's in grade school and one's in middle school, and they're going to be doing their classes online from home. But in this downtime, what we did, we have a beautiful tree in our front yard, and the girls' grandpa built some nice wooden swings and put their names on it. And we hung those swings in the tree, and we have found ourselves having so much more quality time outside of the home in the front yard. As you said, neighbors are walking, keeping their physical distance, mm-hmm. and going by, and they have all shared wonderful comments. I live in a neighborhood that is primarily senior citizens, and they come out and they walk, and it's bringing memories back for them.
Yes.
When people were in front of their home, outside, visiting with
yes.
people, communicating with people, one anothering, as you say. And so
we might like the new norm better than the old norm.
I think so. My daughters love the swings. We're going out there. And then when they're not out there, I've snuck out a couple of times and jumped on the swing myself. So, Bob, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Charles. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the time you've given us tonight.
Alrighty. You stay safe.
Thank you, Bob. You too. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So,
Wait,
what do you think?